The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. Lovin' baseball when we were 12 and innocent. And I'm challenged today because my guest returning to the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network was not innocent when he was 12. And I suspect where he grew up, is where I grew up, has a lot to do with his lack of innocence. Vinnie Richichi, nice to have you back.
Ralph, it's good to be with you, man. It's good to hear your voice and good to be happening with you, as they say.
Yeah, I always enjoy speaking with a former New Yorker who's living on the West Coast. And to get what I like to do later on, I really want to cover our topic of going back to 12, but I want you to, later on in the show, tell us the differences in lifestyle between the East Coast and the West Coast. Is that all homogenized now, or is there a distinct difference? And you go into it. You're in Seattle. You'd been in San Francisco for a while. So we'll talk about that. But I want to start talking about when you were 12. And I know you were a great baseball fan. I happen to know you were a Met fan as well, as am I, but it helped to grow up in Queens, just a quick seven ride away down Roosevelt Avenue to Shea Stadium. What was it like being 12 and a baseball fan?
It was great. It was, you mentioned it before. It was such a time of innocence. It was before you knew the business side of the game, before you knew the machinations of what goes on behind the scenes in the game, before you knew that players were not Supermen. When we were kids, we all thought these guys who played baseball, no matter who they were, from the biggest superstar on a team to the guy who shuttled back and forth from the minors, was a celebrity, was somebody who caught your imagination. And if you met one of these guys or you hung out and you got their autograph, you'd spend hours at the ballpark. Nowadays, people go and, they go a half hour before the game and they leave, sometimes even before the game is over. But what was it like? We know what it's like today. What was it like when you were 12 going to a baseball game? First of all, I'm sure you went to games before you were 12, but at age 12, who was taking you? Who was your mentors leading you to baseball? Well, when I was 12, and that would have been 1967, 68, that was a time that the Mets were undergoing a lot of change. They were undergoing a change from being a laughingstock into being a team that was competitive. That was, that was the year that Tom Seaver came along. That was the year that Tug McGraw was there. And I will say that, Tug McGraw was my favorite player at that point in time. He was that kind of tough guy that liked the kids and stopped and smiled at you if you were in the stands. We used to go to the games, 2-3 hours before. We would be there when you could, as soon as you could get in, as soon as they would open the fences, we could get in.
And there was real batting practice and fielding practice as well, something that's a lost art today you don't see. They had the cages up early, and you get to see both teams take batting practice. You mentioned Tug McGraw. He stood up to management as well in later years. He kind of mocked that whole "you got to believe" thing, was him mocking M. Donald Grant. And there's a long story behind that, but Tug had attitude, and you picked a great guy to have as your number one fan. Who else impressed you in those early years? Now remember, this is right before Gil Hodges led them to the most surprise championship in the whole world. I mean, they came out of nowhere, and there were two people that believed in spring training that they had enough to do it. One was Gil Hodges, and the other one was Jerry Grody. And I don't know how you felt about him early on. I'd be curious to know.
Well, I mean, Ralph, back in those days, you didn't have today you have the emotions of disliking and liking players. Back then, you liked everybody. It wasn't, you didn't hate any players. You didn't dislike any players. The worst thing that a player could do back then was not give you an autograph, after you were standing there. The Mets, they all came over and gave you autographs. So you didn't read into it like you read into when you get older. You like this guy, that guy's a bum. This guy's this. Wasn't any of that, man. They were wearing Mets uniforms, and they were baseball players. And so, Jerry Grody thinking that the Mets were going to win the pennant that year, Gil Hodges thinking that they were going to win the pennant. It didn't factor into it. And that's the innocence. You loved the game. You loved watching the game. You loved the players. You loved a guy like Tommy Agee as much as you liked a guy like Al Luplow. I mean, it was.
I have an Al Luplow baseball card to this day. He signed it. Cleveland came in. I'd go down for autographs to the Biltmore Hotel and the Roosevelt, and these guys would sign. And then he became a Met after. That was cool for me. Al Luplow, whose kid played Major League Ball within the last 5 years.
Well, his grandson that played.
Okay.
Actually played for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I actually wrote a story on Facebook about Al Luplow and getting to see his grandson play, and getting to see and that connection that in seeing him play brought me back to being 12 years old. And watching Al Luplow, and again, and that's how that connection touches so many of us that watch the game. Again, it was just such a great, innocent, as you say, time, because we weren't judging players on their ability. The only ability that we cared about was that we could go to the ballpark and watch them play. Half the time, we didn't even care if they won or they lost.
Right. What was the Shea Stadium experience for you like as a kid?
My typical Shea Stadium experience was to get up, and get on the sneak on the 7 train. Told you I wasn't innocent. Sneak onto the turnstile or walk through the gate. Get on the 7 train. Usually I'd go with my brother. We'd go out to Shea Stadium. We get off the train and walk past the souvenir stands that were there, and look and say, do we want to buy that? Do we want to buy that? Well, we got no money, so we can't buy anything. we either, spent the 75 cents or, the $1.30 or the general admission ticket, which is usually all the money we had. Sometimes we had enough for a Coke. A lot of times we'd make a sandwich at home, stick it in our pocket or in a paper bag, and we bring it with us. And we get to Shea Stadium. A lot of times what we would do is we would go up to the top, we'd sit there until the second inning, and then we'd come downstairs. And we'd go sit out in the outfield, out in the field level boxes, but, all the way out in the outfield. And so we had that perspective of the game that was backwards. Right. We were looking at the game from a whole different angle. But we thought that that's where we could catch a fly ball. We thought that that's where we could hang out and nobody would chase us.
Right.
And then you got if you had some money, you bought a hot dog and a Coke or a soda. And if you didn't have any money, you ate your sandwich from home, and you drink, and you go to the water fountain, and you drink water out of the water fountain.
Right. What do you miss about that game as compared to the game you're watching today?
So many different things, man. So many different things. Well, first of all, I miss the ballpark, the way it was constructed then. I miss the fraternity, the people that were in those seats. It wasn't. They might have been rich Wall Street people sitting down there. We didn't know, but everybody was hanging out and talking baseball, and you get as a kid, you get that kind of license to run around and to do things and to sit in different seats if you wanted to, and nobody would bother you. Everybody would leave you alone. You got to cheer for the players. You got to get down. The game was always get as far down front as you could get. And I missed that. I missed that part of that kind of game that goes on. I missed the camaraderie of going with my friends and hanging out for a baseball game, and the fun that would go on between us, and what we would be talking about. I miss the way the game. I miss that there's rock and roll music and a video scoreboard. We didn't have any of that. We had Jane Jarvis playing the organ. That was it.
Right.
81 games, you got Jane Jarvis playing the organ. There was no pre-recorded music. There was no nothing. There wasn't announcements between the innings about go buy this, go do that, go do this. It was a place that you could go and really enjoy your childhood. There wasn't playgrounds. You found things to do in the ballpark. Sometimes you got up and you walked around. I remember a lot of times we would get up and sit in 4 or 5 different places during a game.
Yeah. Did you ever wish that the game went faster, that you could go home sooner? Like today? It's crazy.
No. Ralph, I've never met any people that spent $100 to go to a game that thought the game should go faster. The people that want the game to go fast are the people that work at the ballpark, mostly the media. They want the game to go fast because they want to be done and they want to be home. What fan pays that kind of money for a game and wants less of it?
Right, absolutely. But the LA culture, for instance, involves getting to the game early or getting to the game late and leaving early. And
thank God we don't live in LA.
Pardon me?
I said, thank God we don't live in LA.
That's true. Which brings us to my initial question. The difference between the East Coast and the West Coast. How did you adapt to not being a New Yorker?
Well, I am a New Yorker. I mean, I'm just because I live here doesn't mean I'm not a New Yorker. I mean, you leave, but you don't lose that thing that makes you a New Yorker.
I did mean that. I meant physically living on the West Coast. How did you adapt? I know you didn't lose a piece of yourself in doing it, because we've talked before. And once you grow up in New York, it's not going to change. But how did you adapt to the people? What are the people like? What do you miss?
Well, I mean, it's a slower pace, although in the time, I moved out here in '80, and there were so many distinct differences between New Yorkers and other people on the West Coast. It was much slower out here, much more of a relaxed pace, much more mellow. That's changed over the time I've been out here. Now it's just as crazy as New York or Los Angeles or any other place. There was a different way of doing things, from the way you drive to the way you walk around. To there wasn't public transportation. You didn't jump on a subway and go someplace. You took your car every place. It was
which didn't hurt your feelings particularly. Tell the audience what your real passion is.
Oh my real passion is baseball. But I am passionate about cars. Baseball. I grew up in the car business. I write about cars. I do shows and podcasts and everything else about cars. I've observed, from when I was a little kid. I always, cars and baseball. Great thing for me about Shea Stadium is it was located right next to the junkyards. So I could, go with my dad on a Saturday morning to the junkyards and then go over to Shea Stadium and watch games.
Oh. Wow.
So I got a double header out of the deal.
All right. What was your favorite car as a kid?
A Corvette. I mean, that's always been my favorite. My favorite ride, my favorite car. Ever since I sat in one when I was, 9 years old, I sat in Pat Gallo's white '64 Corvette, and I just said, "This is my car, man. There's nothing cooler than driving one of these things." And I've owned.
We are back with Vinnie Richichi. A little technical difficulty. Start off where we left off. You were talking about going to Shea Stadium and the pleasure of your doubleheader. And I asked you what your favorite car was, and it was Pat Gallo's '64 Corvette. Who was Pat Gallo?
Pat Gallo was a guy that worked for my father as a mechanic.
Okay.
My dad owned gas stations. And he had a brand spanking new '64 Corvette and a cute blonde girlfriend, which who knows if he wound up marrying her or not. But I figured that if I wanted to meet girls, that this was the way to go. To when I got older, buy a Corvette. And you know what? He was right.
Absolutely. It's amazing in California, especially. I don't know how New York to me was not a car-driven place to live. You are one of the few people that I know from Jackson Heights who cars were a big thing. We were subway people, subway buses type thing. But once you get to California or the West Coast, it's all car-driven. First of all, technically, you can't get by without a car unless you live in certain areas. And more than that, it's people are married to their automobiles, and you're loving it.
Yeah, no, I definitely love it. I mean, I love the technology around it. I love all of the stuff that goes on around it. I would disagree though that while not everybody was married to that, were car people in New York, there was a large amount of kids who did love their cars. Jackson Heights was one of the street racing capitals of New York. The Connecting Highway was one of the hottest drag strips on the East Coast. People came from all over the East Coast to race on the Connecting Highway, which was the Brooklyn Queens Expressway between 49th Street and 30th Avenue. That quarter-mile strip between the overpasses. In the 60s and the 70s, you would go down there, and there would be 10,000 people lined up, maybe even more sometimes, lined up on the rails of the BQE, of the Connecting, to watch people race. And so
I never knew that. My family didn't have a car, and that is all news to me. I know before that, there were golf courses in Jackson Heights. But that was back in the 40s and very early 50s. Well, you taught me something, Vinny.
Jackson Heights was known all over the East Coast, along with Laurel Hill Boulevard. You see, when we grew up too, or when I grew up, I think you're a little older than me, Ralph, but when we grew up, it was a time of change. You had the greasers and the hitters and those guys, and they had cars and motorcycles, and then you were kind of transitioning into the love generation. You had the hippies, and they weren't so much interested in cars as they were love, sex, and smoking dope. And so
it remains a pretty good combination. They had the right idea. You got to give them credit.
I don't say it's wrong. I just think that they were having people were having their priorities changed. They went away from getting a car and went more toward getting stoned.
Well, the world was changing too. There was a lot of rebellion, what with the Vietnam War going on. How was that a factor in your life? How were you lucky enough to escape that?
Well, I was lucky enough by being, let's see, I was eligible for the draft, in 72, I believe, was my first year of being eligible for the draft, or 73. And, it was the lottery by the time. So I think my first year, the first year I was eligible, I went down to join, and they wouldn't take me in the Navy because of injuries I'd had to my legs when I was younger. So I was basically out of it. I was 4F. And,
well, your injuries notwithstanding, you lucked out.
Well, it's funny because in my estimation, I didn't, because I wanted to go. There were a number of people, where I hung out, who were all were going, were signing up, and I wanted to go too. I wanted to join the Navy, and they wouldn't. I remember I was down at Fort Hamilton, and I was, I contested the decision when they said you can't join. So they have a special section of contesting. You contest the decision. You go and you sit in a room and you wait, and some Army guy comes out, or actually it was a Navy guy because I was trying to get into the Navy. Navy guy comes out and takes you in a room and they talk to you. And they took me in a room and they had x-rays of me and everything that they took of my ankles. So I'm sitting in this room and there's 125 guys in the room that are trying to get out of joining, trying to get out of getting drafted. and I'm the only schmuck that's in the room that's trying to get in.
That's very
looking
funny.
At me like I'm crazy.
Right. Well, it's interesting you bring up memories. I enlisted in the Air Force at Fort Hamilton. So, I was, and I guess I was lucky enough to get in. But in 1965, one really needed to stay out of the Army. So I remember trying very, very hard on all the tests they give you in the Air Force. I was happy to have gotten in to what they call beating the draft. You beat the draft by enlisting for more years than you would have. But it all worked out, and transition in life. If you had to live,
it was wild though. It was, and that's why I was trying to get in the Navy. I tried to get in because my father was there. But remember, if you got drafted, you only had to serve 2 years. If you enlisted, you had to go for 4. And but I said I'd rather do 4 years. Chances are, if I'm in the Navy, I'm not going to be going to Vietnam. They're going to send me somewhere else. And I knew which MOSs to pick so that I wouldn't have to go to Vietnam, because no matter what anybody tells you, nobody freaking wanted to go to Vietnam. Nobody, whether you enlisted and you were a hero or you weren't a hero. You were a chicken like me. Nobody wanted to go to Vietnam unless you had something, a screw loose in your mind.
No question about that. Once I was in, I did everything possible to have an honorable service and keep from going AWOL or anything like that, but legitimately not have to go to Vietnam. And it's just a natural thing. I was stationed at Travis Air Force Base, which is a demarcation, which was at the time, to the Middle East, or not the Middle East, but the Far East. And I saw the look on these guys who were lined up to get on planes to carry them into a war zone, and they don't have anything against the people that are fighting. And there was no clear definition of right or wrong. It was terrible times. It led to family discord where, the old time, you want to get out of the draft, and the old time people who have served with dignity in these other wars are looking at this war as something that's wrong. But again, big transition, getting by it was nice. What brought you to Pittsburgh initially? Was it a radio gig to go to Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Because
CBS
you slowly came out west. It wasn't all at once. You spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh.
I went all the way out west, and then I came back for 10 years to Pittsburgh from the west, from Seattle. And I went back because CBS had contacted me and said, we're going to put a new sports station on the air in Pittsburgh, and we think you're one of the guys that we'd like to have on the station. And nice. I saw an opportunity to do something that I had done once before, and had wanted another shot at doing it better, with some money behind you, which was to put a station on the air. And we got a chance to do that in Pittsburgh by putting an FM sports station on the air where there had been none before. And it's a great feeling to be able to build something like that, from scratch. I mean, you're going in there, you're not taking somebody else's place. You're starting it up from scratch. It's like opening a new store or a new restaurant. You're doing things your way, and you're coming in, and we were very successful, very, very successful in Pittsburgh. We put the station on the air, and we were number 2 in our demographic inside of 6 months.
Wow. Nice. What did you like about Pittsburgh itself, living there?
Say again, Ralph. What
did you like about living in Pittsburgh?
Oh, I love the people, man. Love the people. The people in Pittsburgh it's a different scene, man. It's a lot of people who, despite the troubles of that city, never left, stayed there. Their grandparents have been there. Their parents were there. Their great-grandparents were there. They were there for years and years and years. Real, just kind of salt-of-the-earth people who would stick with you and help you out and, just really stay by your side, no matter what. Whatever troubles you had, whatever things were going wrong, they stuck with you. They, it was a great group of working class people. It wasn't a flashy city. If you had money, you didn't show it off. You kept it to yourself.
Right.
And you it wasn't like a lot of places where people try to show you how much they got or what they have or this or that. For the most part, it was just really great, down-to-earth people and some of the most incredibly passionate sports fans that I'd ever encountered.
Really? I know about their passion for the 60 Pirates and Bill Mazeroski. Did you get to meet him?
Yes, I did.
What's he like?
I mean, when you're interviewing him, he's a nice guy. I don't know really much about him otherwise.
Okay.
I in the years that I've been doing this, I've learned that what you interview somebody, he was a good interview. I don't know about his personal life, but he was a good interview and a good guy to talk to. And I know that he would come and he would help the Pirates out, talk to the younger players, and really, take an interest in trying to get the Pirates back on their feet.
Okay, the one other guy I want to talk to you about the Pirates, because he grew up in my town of Alameda, California, is Pops, Willie Stargell. Any impressions of him?
Well, he was dead before I got there, so.
Oh, okay. So that he was quiet in those in those days.
In the typical symmetry we see of baseball, Pops died on the day that PNC Park opened.
Whoa.
So the people that you talk to about him, and I knew several people that knew him and talked to him and used to, interview him and stuff like that, to a person, they all said he was a great guy.
Okay.
So,
you started to say something about interviewing people and what it's about in terms of how well you get to know them. I don't. In other words, did you really ever get to know somebody you interviewed, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, you make there's certain people that you meet, you make friends with, and you talk to, and especially if you cover a team on a day-by-day basis. If you, I spent 5 years as one of the clubhouse reporters for the Mariners and post-game show host. And so you get to know the players. You get to know some of these people and what they are. You meet their families and so on and so forth, especially when you work for the rights holder station, because you're always doing shows and events with people. And some of the there are some people you meet and you really get to like. There are some people you meet and you really like anything in life. They're phonies. What you see on an interview, and an interview is not what they are or who they are.
It goes back to losing your innocence and the theme of the show. It's easy for someone like you who has been in the business to become jaded a little bit. Not that you are, but covering these people who sometimes become millionaires with fourth grade education and this, that, and the other thing makes it difficult. I guess my point is, was there a specific time when you lost your innocence over baseball?
I think I lost my innocence over baseball the day that they traded Tom Seaver. I think that was when you realized that it was not much more than a business. That players are property of the various clubs, and that these particular people and players and management, that there's two distinct sides to this thing, and it's never going to change. That there was this constant give and take between the union and the management, and it was just like any other job. You had the management that tried to get everything they could squeeze out of you, and the players that tried to get everything they could squeeze out of management. And it was a business. The whole idea that a player and a team belonged to a town, and that it was always going to be in that town, and you were always going to be able to root for that team. Once they traded Seaver, and you just lost that, and that was the first, the first part of it that really, made you think, wow, this sucks. Here I am, I've been rooting for Tom Seaver, and now I'm going to see him in a Reds uniform. That's not right. And it happened with other players before, but never like this. Never the hero of the team, the guy that that did nothing really to get traded on the field. I mean, you can understand if you traded somebody and they didn't play the game right, or they didn't fit in a club or something like that. But when they traded a player for merely money, for merely the fact that or a personality conflict, which is really why Seaver got traded, not so much for money as it was for a personality conflict and a member of the media who just didn't want to let up on the guy and wanted to create a situation to make himself look good.
That was Dick Young. Dick Young.
Yeah, the late great Dick Young.
He ruined his entire image on that Seaver transaction, how he dealt with that. He was a pioneer sports writer in his day. He was a great sports writer. He was basically the first to really go into a game after the game and sit down with the players. So, but he was for management and behind the times.
He was also mouthpiece for the management, and he did everything he could to help break the players' union and to paint the players in a horrible light. And you don't realize that a lot of times when you're young. You're a kid. You don't realize that's what's going on. And as you get older and you realize how life really works, life really is like baseball. When you're a kid, it's all fun and games and everything's a falderall. But when you get older and you realize the complexity and the different situations of things, life isn't so easy anymore, because you have to deal with different things. And that's really when it comes back to the whole original premise of the show. When many people lose their innocence is when they realize these things, that these guys are not supermen. They're human. And they're just like your father or your uncle or your brother or your, whatever. They're not heroes. You think you're heroes when you're a kid, but as you grow older, you find out who real heroes are. And they're just men who can do something in their lives better than 99.99% of the rest of the population. And I think that is when you start to realize that they're gifted, but they're not heroes.
Right. Very good point.
Neither are the people that employ them.
You're the hero of the day, Vinny. You're the hero.
No, please don't call me.
On the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. On the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. You're my hero of the day. How about that if I reword it? You're tremendous. You gave a great interview today, and I'm just happy to have you as a returning guest.
Ralph, I'm glad you gave me the opportunity. I love being on with you, and anytime you want to do it.
We'll do it again really soon. I want you to stay healthy and get through this pandemic crap healthy and better for it.
I'm trying hard. Did you get vaccinated, Ralph?
I didn't, but my mate, I didn't qualify for it here in California yet. My mate just got her second vaccination. Next Sunday, she'll be totally cool, and I'm waiting for the Johnson & Johnson one-hitter. I remain sequestered. I get out. In the last year, I've maybe been out 12 times to walk around. I have, I'm agoraphobic. I don't know. I can't think of that word. Agoraphobic. Before the pandemic, I wasn't much on getting out. And I've made a life. I get my exercise in the backyard, walking around. And we order food from Safeway delivered. And I'm doing it as much as possible. I know in another 2 months that they will have a handle on this. I'm very positive along those lines because once they...
Well, you stay safe, man, and if you can get the vaccination, man.
I will as soon as possible.
Do the same thing. Get it, and let's get rid of this thing, man, and get back to our lives.
That's what we need doing. Stay healthy, Vinny, and I want you to come back soon. I'm blessed having you. So,
and I'm glad that you let me come on your show, man. I really appreciate it. You call me anytime.
I will, Vinny, and I want to tell the audience that it's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and I have a good time in life. So happy trails, and we'll see you when we do. Adios.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.